40 years ago, we opened our doors with one mission in mind.
We'll be right back with the top 10 songs of 1983.
To sell quality American-made vehicles at a fair price.
You have arrived.
And we've loved every minute of the ride. Celebrating 40 years of Two Rivers Ford.
Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Lovely to have you guys here. Hope you've had a fantastic weekend. Lucas and I, Robert, at some point, we are with you until 1 o'clock. So get in here. 615-737-1045 is how you do that. We got news off the top, kids. Spicy. Even if it's basically from last Wednesday. How does something like that slip through the cracks, do you think? Either way, last week, there was a discussion between two of the NFL Network's top draft analysts. That's Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks. They got a podcast. It's called Move the Sticks. Very popular podcast. Very good listen year-round, but particularly this time of year. If you are somebody who's interested in getting to know a little more about these prospects, where they come from, the people who coach them, all these kind of things. So I got a text last Wednesday, I think, is when I sent that to you and Robert, Lucas, letting me know that, hey, worth looking into. Titans are sniffing around number 3 overall. And so tried to get it in a couple of different ways so that I could report it and wasn't able to do so. Then I'm listening to Move the Sticks from last Wednesday, yesterday, while I'm getting some work done around the house, doing some yard work, things like that. And I hear Daniel Jeremiah speak it into existence. Hey, the Titans, they're looking around at number 3. We're going to play that clip for you a little later, so you can hear the full analysis from Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks. But that's something that consistently around the league that is being discussed. Of all the teams talking about trading up for and, you know, I'm not going to say specifically for a quarterback because we don't know that definitively. But it is fair to imagine that if a team was inquiring about Arizona's 3rd overall draft choice this year, it would be to get involved with the quarterback draft. Fair? I think so. Now, that causes a lot of consternation. By the way, it's just exploring the option. Doesn't mean they're definitively trading up to number 3. Because I saw a lot of pearl clutching about this yesterday. It would be negligence if they didn't explore what it might cost to get up there. And especially since they know the guy who's running the show in Tempe this year. Monty Ossenfort, went to the Cardinals, their first-year GM, by way of the Titans front office. So, yeah, give your old buddy Monty a call, see what it might cost. And if it interests you, great. If you think the juice is worth the squeeze, go get your player. And if not, continue on with your due diligence in the draft process. But it's worth noting that they're sniffing around.
Who would they be competing with for that spot?
Indy.
Just Indy?
No, I think the Raiders. Seattle probably not at 5 right now. But I think the Raiders, the Colts, the Titans seem a wild card in the middle of all that.
The Falcons don't appear to be in a rush to go get another quarterback.
Doesn't seem like it. So I would say probably Vegas, most likely, but I don't think it's a bad idea because you always think about, all right, who does it benefit to have this information out there? I think it benefits Arizona very much to try and thirst trap the Colts. Just come on up. It's just one more pick, guys. We could make it worth your while. You want to keep your divisional rival down, don't you? Come on up. Come get this 3rd overall pick, Chris Ballard.
They're calling us.
That's exactly why that makes sense to have out there in the news cycle. If you're trying to trade bait Indianapolis, because the idea that Indy might be leapfrogged by Tennessee when Houston's already picking 2nd, and the quarterback situation is going to go fast and furiously. It seems the run's going to come right off the top. Could that even prompt Hendon Hooker being a higher draft choice than any of us have previously imagined? We're going to be joined by Bruce Feldman tomorrow of The Athletic, one of the most well-sourced people in the world of college football. Bruce put together a mock draft where he has Hendon Hooker going particularly high and a very interesting scenario for the Titans. But that's tomorrow. Here's today. If they went up, if they did it, the 2 questions that you immediately ask: what would it cost and who for? Now, there's no possible way that we could get a straight answer right now on who for. And I think everybody's going to have their preferences, though nobody seems to be happy about the idea of the Titans, at least in the early feedback that I've seen in my mentions, Lucas. I don't know. We put it to a poll because it's probably going to be between Richardson and Levis at that point, the Florida and Kentucky quarterbacks, imagining that in some form or fashion, Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, however you want to order them, might go 1 and 2. That seems the most likely scenario. Now, those are all assumptions. And we have no idea how this draft is going to break out. But I think at this point, it's fair to imagine that that is the most likely scenario if you're playing the percentages. Nobody seems to be happy with the idea of them giving up draft capital to go get either Richardson or Levis at this point. And I think that's kind of silly.
The Vols/Titans contingent of the fan base is sweating right now because they've spent this entire offseason trashing Anthony Richardson and Will Levis. Look what they did. They couldn't even win in college. Will Levis threw 3 picks in Neyland Stadium. He's terrible. Oh.
I want to go back. I wish there was a way. And I was able to do this with some like online articles and stuff like that. But to hear the conversations around, and listen, I'm not saying that either Will Levis or Anthony Richardson are these kind of project players with such a high upside that it is silly to even consider not taking them or even the idea of trading up for them. Because some NFL team is going to take these two in either the top 10, if not the top 5. So if they're good enough to go in the top 5, why are they not good enough for you, is my question. So I wanted to read some of the articles around Josh Allen coming out of Wyoming and Pat Mahomes coming out of Texas Tech. Because while I don't think it is not fair to put that kind of projection on either Richardson or Levis's shoulders, the idea of discussion around projection quarterbacks is what I'm more interested in. Because nobody in either of those drafts would have considered Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen the top quarterbacks by consensus. Both were considered projects. Both landed in fantastic places for their development. Both have turned out to be potentially generational talents. Certainly Mahomes. Allen seems well on his way. Will Levis is probably Ryan Tannehill. at what he tops out at. And I think that's a great NFL career. But it doesn't entice you if you're a Titans fan, and that's the thing that you've grown tired of, you've grown weary of. Then there's Richardson, whose best parallel is probably Josh Allen, but worse from an accuracy standpoint. But the testing and the physical measurements that make you go crazy about the idea of, could we get this thing right? Now, I think it's a useless exercise if you're gonna armchair GM without any risk or reward from it, and you're gonna armchair GM as somebody who's scared of what the upside of those two players could be. But I'm not interested in hearing Titans fans, or really any fan base, it's not specific to Titans fans, any fan base complain about the idea that, we're not doing the right things to get the kind of quarterback that could change our franchise. I don't know that I'm not inclined to think that Will Levis is a franchise-changing player, but Anthony Richardson is discussed as somebody who can be. I'm not real interested in hearing people complain about the idea that the Titans aren't taking swings at quarterbacks, hearing that they're exploring trading up for number 3 overall with the kind of generational talent that this guy could potentially be. Because if you're going to play scared, what's the point? If you're going to even have these discussions scared, what's the point? I think that's fun. Like I said, they may not end up doing it. It may not make sense. The closest structure, and I think we talked about this a little bit, maybe Friday, maybe Thursday, can't recall specifically, but at some point last week, I kind of posed to you the idea, what if they traded up for a quarterback? And I had this from Daniel Jeremiah, this nugget out there that we ended up seeing reported by Daniel Jeremiah, that the Titans were exploring it. So I just wanted to pose you guys the hypothetical. And I gave you Trey Lance, the trade between the Niners and the Dolphins that saw San Francisco come up from 12 to the 3rd overall pick and trade with Miami. They gave up number 12 overall in the 2021 draft. They gave up their 2022 and 2023 first-round choices along with a 3rd-round pick in 2022. That's what Miami got for their number 3 overall pick. Now, for those of you who follow things like the trade value chart, I know Robert had done the trade value chart numbers on the 3rd overall pick. I believe it's worth 2,200 points. I need to fact check that but basically you're trying to come up with equal or close to trade value for a team who's trying to come up or give up, who you're trying to get to give up the 3rd overall pick, which in this case would be Arizona. So I think it's a fascinating discussion. And again, it depends on their preference. 615-737-1045 if you want to discuss the idea that the Titans have been legitimately interested in Arizona's 3rd overall pick. We'll also talk some college hoops. One national championship decided yesterday afternoon. Another one coming up tonight in the men's side of things. David Cobb, national college basketball columnist, will join us, and we'll get into all of that coming up next. on this Monday morning. 615-737-1045. That's how you jump in. So we've talked a little bit about the Titans and exploring options around trading up specifically with the Arizona Cardinals from the 11th pick to the 3rd overall selection in this year's draft. There are some interesting implications to that, obviously, and we'll discuss a little later on. Also, an update, question mark, on Jeffrey Simmons' contract situation. I'm not sure what to make of the messaging that his agent was putting out this weekend, but we will certainly get to that as well. Meanwhile, we got a national championship game tonight on the men's side of things. The March Madness in the women's bracket coming to a conclusion last night, and we will see a champion, an unlikely champion at some point between San Diego State and UConn. David Cobb joins us now. He's a national college basketball columnist here on 104.5 The Zone. David, appreciate you taking some time on game day.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I never say no when somebody asks me to come on from the state of Tennessee. I'm from Memphis, and I went to Tennessee, and I'm repping the Volunteer State here in Houston for the Final Four. I feel kind of like a little out of place because we got all this San Diego media, all this Northeastern media, all the national guys, and then here I am, like, very aware of how often I say y'all in conversation.
Well, listen, if Tennessee can't have an actual representative at the Final Four, then we're very grateful as a state, I think, to have at least somebody there on the state's behalf. All right, so let's just from a 1,000-foot view here, David, like, the fact that it's San Diego State and UConn. UConn is obviously overwhelming, and you can debate the merits of seeding and things like that. Were they properly seeded as a 4, whatever. But the fact that this is the final that we're all looking at this point, how surprised are you?
Very surprised. If you go back to January in particular, UConn went through a stretch of 5 losses in 6 games in which they dropped from number 2 to the country to barely hanging on in the polls and starting to look like a team that was going to need to rally just to make the tournament even perhaps. So it is shocking that this is the final game that we have, especially from the San Diego State side as well. A Mountain West team had never been to the Elite Eight, and now all of a sudden they're here playing for the national title after that conference had really, really struggled in the NCAA tournament over the last few years. It's college basketball. There's parity. Anything can happen. But this is certainly a surprising matchup.
So with that being said, the way that these two teams have found themselves here, what do you like about the matchup? Who do you think it benefits at this point?
Yeah, UConn just doesn't have a lot of weaknesses. There's really nothing you can pinpoint there to say this is where you exploit the Huskies. They're an all-around team, 2 great bigs, a ton of really good shooting. The point guard play, I think, is better than they get credit for with Tristan Newton. And then the defense has been on another level recently, really taking it to the next level when it matters the most. And I think the defense is why you're seeing not just UConn winning games, but winning games by double digits in relatively easy fashion. So San Diego State is very defensive-oriented as well, but they just don't have nearly the offensive firepower as UConn does. And so Tennessee fans will appreciate this, or maybe that they're kind of sick of this style, but San Diego State has to bring UConn into the mud like Tennessee did against Duke in the second round. I mean, that's kind of the key for San Diego State if they're going to have a chance here is to get UConn's bigs into foul trouble, get Dan Hurley frustrated and worked up on the sideline over the officiating, right? Distract his team maybe a little bit in that way. That's the key for San Diego State because they just don't have the firepower really to keep up if it's not that type of game.
At David W. Cobb is where you can follow him, national college basketball columnist for CBS Sports. You wrote a really interesting piece about Adama Sanogo, the big man from UConn. I hope I've said his name correctly. And the idea that he's currently fasting because he's been observing Ramadan and how the UConn training staff has had to basically get creative to keep this guy functioning at the highest possible level at a time when I can't imagine his body is at optimal and peak performance. What was interesting about the dynamics and what did you find out through the reporting?
Right, so he can't eat or drink, even water, from sunup until sundown. So tonight he will have about a little less than an hour prior to tip after the sun has set in Houston where he will be able to eat and drink. If you think about it, though, do you really want to go and carbo load, 1,500 calories, 30 minutes before the national championship game? That seems like a recipe for disaster. So it's created a situation where the UConn staff has really had to get creative. And there's actually two other UConn players who are also observing Ramadan. The only other one who plays is Hassan Diarra, but he plays 14 minutes a game. So you got two rotation players here who are literally not fueling their bodies in a normal way at all before the biggest game of their lives. And to this point, it has not been an issue for Sanogo. He's been, I think, the best player in the NCAA tournament, even while going through this for the last few games. So that's sort of a wild, bizarre wrinkle to this situation for UConn. The fact that literally the best player on the floor is not eating or drinking for the entire day leading up to the national title contest. So basically they just put a lot of hydration and calories on him before the sun came up this morning, I'm assuming, and they'll hope that he remains well-fueled tonight.
In reading your latest piece this morning, about an hour before we got on the air here today, you wrote about Dan Hurley and the San Diego State coach. Forgive me, Dutcher, the last name. I'm blanking on the first name off the top of my head. Brian Dutcher. Thank you. And their fathers, the impact that they had coming up through the world of basketball, and now how their sons find themselves on this biggest stage. What was unique about the discussions that you found around that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just this idea that Bob Hurley, so the UConn coach's father, 45 years as a high school basketball coach and a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest high school basketball coaches in history, but never went to the college stage, never reached the Final Four. And then for Brian Dutcher at San Diego State, his father coached at Minnesota for about a decade, but the farthest they ever got was the Sweet 16. He spent much of his career at the community college ranks and at Eastern Michigan, and really in the unglamorous side of the coaching profession. And so for these two guys now, both over the age of 50, to have their fathers, one still with them and in the arena tonight, to see this second generation come to fruition on the sport's biggest stage, it's cool. And they're both very, I think, understanding of the fact that they're likely not here today without the foundations that their fathers laid for them. And, it's nice to see that acknowledged and appreciated by these guys, because they're obviously supremely talented. But do you ever even get your foot in the door if your dad is not in that business? And, it's a conversation we have around sports all the time, especially when coaches get jobs. But these guys seem to understand and embrace and don't shy away from the fact that, without what their fathers demonstrated and helped them with early on, they may not be here today.
David Cobb of CBS Sports here with us talking March Madness. The national championship game tonight at David W. Cobb is where you follow him. How would you, I guess, summarize this season? I suppose it won't be complete until we know who's crowned champion, but given the unexpected results that we at least find ourselves with in this final game, has this season, do you think, been beneficial to the larger interest of college basketball, or how would you kind of put this into perspective for people?
Yeah, I would say it's been a season of change, and I think ultimately it is good for the game. I would be so shocked if the ratings tonight compared to the ratings of a Kansas, North Carolina title game, right? But the ratings have been really good throughout. Interest has been high throughout. We're seeing new characters, new coaches. Roy Williams, Mike Krzyzewski, Jim Boeheim, the list goes on. Those guys are done. This is a new sport, a new age. Transferring has proliferated throughout college basketball. Guys are getting paid to play now, and parity is at an all-time high. That's made this a season of change. And I think we've seen characters at this Final Four who we're going to look back on in 10 to 15 years and say 2023 is when it started. Florida Atlantic and Dusty May come to mind as a perfect example. Every Gonzaga story, every Butler story has to start somewhere. We may have seen the beginning of that for either that program as a whole or for Dusty May as a coach. And then look at conference realignment and how San Diego State is in position now to maybe in the years ahead jump to the Pac-12 or another conference and be arguably, I think, the best basketball program in whatever that league looks like. And they're going to build a foundation from this. And we could look back on this Final Four, as underwhelming as perhaps it seemed, and see that some history began here this week.
He's David Cobb. He's covering the world of college basketball and college football for CBS Sports. At David W. Cobb is where you follow him. CBSSports.com is where you can get his coverage. David, enjoy the game tonight. Hopefully it's an exciting result, and thank you for taking some time on game day. We know you're busy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
David Cobb there with us on 104.5 The Zone. I was shocked. I mean, FAU felt in control of that game the entire time. UConn just walloped Miami, and it almost seems like an inevitability that the winner of this year's tournament will come out of that side of the bracket, whether it ended up being Miami or UConn. But UConn is just overwhelming at this point. You can't discount anything from happening in this sport because the tournament is evidence of this. A Final Four buzzer beater is how San Diego State advances after having to overcome a pretty significant margin from FAU, who got off to a great start in the first half of that game. I really, we've had this conversation. Do good television ratings mean that it's a good basketball game? And the answer is, of course, no. San Diego State and UConn, I don't know what the television ratings are going to be after this. And largely, I don't care. If you've enjoyed the sport thus far and it's giving you a unique finish, something that you may have the opportunity to see, UConn's done it a couple of times, but with 3 different coaches. I think that puts them in a unique historical standpoint unto themselves.
If UConn wins tonight, they will have more national championships as a program than Duke, and they will be tied with, more national championships than Kansas, and they will be tied with Duke. Mm-hmm. Be their 5th title.
And we don't, at least I think in common conversation, it doesn't necessarily feel that way because it hasn't been under one figurehead of college basketball coaching the way that so many of these things tend to be.
Which makes it more impressive.
Krzyzewski or, I just because I saw that he was hospitalized today, Bobby Knight is still talked about in these terms, so hopefully everything's okay with Coach Knight at this point, although I know he's getting up there in age. But it's not, I don't feel like UConn is consistently discussed on the men's side of things as that dominant force, as that ever-present contending program in college basketball, even though they've been around it plenty and won several times at this stage. And then there's San Diego State, which is just this, jazz hands kind of defensive specialist team, not necessarily electric, but does enough from an offensive standpoint to keep them in games. They were able to battle back well, I thought, against FAU in that game in a way that I didn't think the matchup necessarily favored them. But matchups can only take you so far, I guess, when the sport of college basketball is as prone to upsets as it is. And I'm excited to see how this finishes because it'll just be something different, I feel like, at least.
I'm torn on who would be the better matchup for UConn. UConn obviously is undisputably the hottest team in the country. Would it have been FAU who could probably score with them, or would it be San Diego State, obviously, who they actually play, that could kind of bring them down into the muck, like David was talking about?
So, it's a kind of – I think the women's championship game from last night is an interesting case study for this because you would say that Iowa was a good team defensively, but what are they known for? They're known for volume scoring from Caitlin Clark, and they're able to put her in positions all over the place to be able to maximize their potential offensively. And then LSU blows them out even as Caitlin Clark is getting her numbers. So I can't necessarily just default to, if you're going to get into a shootout at this point, you just try and score with them because that's not going to be all that effective. LSU, I think in that women's game, they didn't hit a three-pointer in the entire second half from the way that they started that game out to build and generate an early lead. So I don't want to say FAU automatically would be a better matchup for UConn because I don't think offensive college basketball necessarily translates that way, where I'm looking around at all these teams in the AFC and in the world of the NFL and be like, just don't draft defensive players. Just get running backs, get wide receivers, get tight ends, get quarterbacks, and try and go for Mahomes' neck.
Well, LSU got far more from their bench. Yeah. They have far more scoring depth than Iowa does. The Caitlin Clark show is unbelievable, but LSU showed they have more all-around talent. Obviously, UConn has much more of that than San Diego State. So if San Diego State, I'm worried about this game because if UConn wins, there's potential for them to just kind of run away with this like they did against Miami.
You're worried it's going to be a non-competitive final.
Yes. And if it is competitive, then it's not going to be terribly pretty because that's the way San Diego State would want it. But I think that would be more compelling, watching San Diego State kind of drag UConn down and seeing if they can scrap their way to a national title with that play style. Because Virginia could do that with that play style, but they had the talent to do that. San Diego State doesn't have the high-level talent that a Virginia had in that national championship run. So that would be one of the most stunning, if not the most stunning, national championships in men's college hoops history if San Diego State's able to pull this off tonight.
This is the one place that I will actively advocate for ugly basketball, because it probably means that we got a more competitive result. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. Philly Mike up next. What's happening, Mike?
All right. Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Great.
I was telling Lucas when I worked for Coca-Cola in Houston back in the mid-'90s, best example was Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon, who always had to go through Ramadan during the playoffs. And I'm sure that UConn folks, maybe since they're already in Houston, but the Dream would always load up right after sunset and come out there and play. And he earned the MVP in '94, helped the Rockets win the title in '94, and came back and did it again in '95. So it can be done, and I'm sure that Sunoco will be fired up and ready to go today. So I just want to give that a little input to you guys.
No, great perspective. Thank you for the call, Mike. Always appreciate hearing from you. I just think it's always so fascinating, and sports science has never been better. So, going back to the 90s with Hakeem Olajuwon and now what Adama Sanogo is physically preparing himself for at this time of year as he fasts as a part of Ramadan.
I mean, Sanogo's been balling to this point.
Yeah. No, I just think it's interesting having to adjust that, because it's coming if you're the UConn health and or strength and conditioning staff, basically, and the nutrition staff, trying to make sure that this guy's body is ready to kind of cycle up for the most important time of year for him to be able to rely on his durability there. So it'll be fun. Hopefully. I do kind of have a similar concern. I think we all do, because UConn's just caving people's skulls in. I don't remember seeing. It's been a couple of years since we've seen that kind of dominant force on one side of the bracket, right? I don't remember looking at so many lopsided results, just because they're so versatile offensively in how many different ways that they can beat you, which is why I thought the Miami game might be more fun, because Miami has done that consistently throughout the tournament play as well. When, for example, Isaiah Wong is not having a good shooting night, they're able to pick it up with points in the paint or with their ability to rebound, and that was something that was not present against UConn, because UConn just flat dominated them on both sides of the floor. Let's take a look at some transactions. The Titans made a couple of signings, brought back one free agent, and added a new player to their class of now 7 new players who will join this team in 2023. I think both of them are interesting for different reasons, so we'll talk about those coming up next. Couple of transactions that were made after or right around close of business on Friday. We were already off the air. One new player, one returning player for the Tennessee Titans as they continue to try and fill out holes on the roster. So they bring back backup center Corey Levin, who has also played guard, was drafted here under John Robinson. I think that was the Kevin Byard draft. As a 5th-round pick out of UT Chat, had a cup of coffee with like the Broncos. I think he was a Bear for a hot second. Maybe even with the Jets, I think, at some point with Corey, and then came back here last year as a player who, when I talked to the coaches about him, particularly Keith Carter. Now, I know Keith Carter's not here anymore, but Keith Carter, who was notoriously not the easiest to work under, was very complimentary of how big a difference in the person and the professional approach that Corey Levin had brought in his second stint here in Tennessee. Now, what do you care about a backup center? Well, the backup center just became very, very important because one of these dudes, and Brewer's technically not under contract.
I was going to say, is he the backup center right now?
I haven't seen Brewer. I haven't seen Brewer sign his tender yet. I haven't seen any reporting around it. I haven't heard any movement on that. So as far as I know, I'm not considering Aaron Brewer on the roster.
So until further notice, who's your center right now?
Corey Levin. So you got your starting center, kids. You excited? Now here's the thing. I thought Corey, in an extended amount of work. And this is like I told Ben after we wrapped up Friday's show. By the way, really grateful for Ben Jones. I let Ben close out the show because I think it was the first opportunity, like in a public platform, that he was getting to say goodbye to people, like Titans fans. And it was cool to see the way you guys responded. I know he really appreciated. But I wanted to ask Ben all kinds of different questions. We'll have to bring him back at some point about Corey Levin, about Malik Willis, and all these different things, guys that he's worked with and worked and had to help bring up, basically, with all the different transitions that's gone around the Titans locker room and roster here in the last couple of years. But yeah, until further notice, Corey Levin's your starting center. Now, I'd say go back and I don't know how much people are going to go back and watch offensive line tape from a season that was lost in games that you know the result. But if you were curious, I thought Levin and Jordan Ruse, after they shut down Nate Davis for the remainder of the season, I think at some point in mid-December, I thought both of those players acquitted themselves well enough to get an opportunity to compete for a starting job or at worst be a backup on this year's team. Because I do think that those players did provide some semblance of competent depth, even as LaRaven Clark and Dennis Daly were nightmarish and trying to figure out things around Aaron Brewer as an undersized guard. Again, he's not signed his tender as of when we sit here doing this radio show live Monday morning at about 10:50. So that's a critical piece of the offensive line puzzle that they are saying, okay, we'll give you an opportunity at this thing. It's a 1-year deal for Corey Levin. Then there's the tight end. Because as we talk about draft needs, and we're getting closer now, we're officially in NFL draft month. Bud, you excited?
Very.
I haven't made, that wasn't very genuine. I didn't feel it. Make me feel it. It's like Succession. Feel it. Waystar Royco.
Some people get excited for the draft more than the season, I feel like. I feel like there's people that get up for the draft more than actual football.
No, I agree.
That is crazy to me. But yes, I am excited because it's the most impactful thing that happens this time of year by far.
I don't disagree by any stretch of the imagination. But these two signings do, I think, give them a little more flexibility than they might otherwise have had. Trayvon Wesco is the new player that they've added. He's a tight end. The receiving statistics will not blow you off the blow your mind, but that's not what he's there to do. He's there to blow you off the ball. He's a run blocker. You need your I don't know how else to describe them, but they have a type when it comes to their inline tight ends. They're typically all built like tree trunks. Whether it's Luke Stocker, Jeff Swaim, or now Trayvon Wesco, that is the latest in the line of inline Titans tight ends. Now, this team needs one. I don't necessarily know that it takes you out of the running for, say, Michael Mayer, who can do it all in this year's tight end class, or potentially if you wanted to run the risk of Darnell Wright dropping out of not Darnell Wright, Darnell Washington. I'm thinking offensive lineman because he basically is one if you draft Darnell Washington, the Georgia tight end, though the traits might potentially lend themselves to him being one of several first-round picks this year. It's between him and Kincaid, it seems like. Dalton Kincaid, the Utah tight end, and Darnell Washington, who would be more of a projection, but certainly would make a difference for any team who likes to run the football, and we know this team does. But the run-blocking highlights are not something you typically go to the tight end film room for, but they're there, and they're nice, and he will help you. He will be an upgrade over Jeff Swaim, which is exactly what you needed. Functional, not sexy. Basically the definition of this entire free agent class. So those are two building block foundational type pieces that aren't gonna give you the sex appeal, aren't wide receivers, which it doesn't necessarily seem like this team is all that hell-bent on trying to compete. I saw Marvin Jones went back to the Detroit Lions after spending some time with the Jaguars since last we were on the air. So these veteran wide receiver contracts continue to come off the market. And if Tennessee is going to be interested in any of them, there are still options, but nothing that's going to, I think, substantially change the fortunes of your skill position group right now. I don't think anybody out there is going to be an upgrade over what they brought back in Nick Westbrook-Akina. I think that's a fair assessment at this point. 615-737-1045 is how you can jump in. Let's talk a little bit about a national championship game that was decided last night. Shocking controversy in a blowout win for the LSU Tigers over the Iowa Hawkeyes in the women's college basketball national title game. It was fantastic. There was trash talk. There was offensive highlights all over the place. A new record set as far as scoring in a women's national championship game. So we'll get into the controversy around the Natty last night coming up next. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 10:59. Good morning from the Superbook.com sports desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. Sunday afternoon, LSU won its first women's basketball title in program history. A 102-85 win over Iowa. Hawkeye star Caitlin Clark finished with 30 points in the loss, breaking the record for most points in an NCAA tournament with 193 total. The Nashville Sounds opened the 2023 season with a series win over Louisville, taking both games of a Saturday doubleheader and falling 3-1 on Sunday. In college baseball, Vanderbilt has opened the SEC slate with a 9-0 mark, sweeping Georgia over the weekend. Tennessee lost 2 out of 3 in a weekend series at top-ranked LSU. Nashville Soccer Club got back in the win column Saturday night, a 2-0 win at Orlando City. Hani Mukhtar with an assist and a goal, his first of the season. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second down on this Monday. Welcome in, welcome back. If you've been hanging out with us, lovely to have you here, whether you just got here or otherwise. No matter how you're listening, we're grateful for you. Lucas, myself, with you until 1 o'clock. Robert not emerged from the never-ending cigarette break so far this morning. He was very fired up to talk about WrestleMania. He told me he was coming into work today, so I suppose he just lied or he, blacked out at some point when George Kittle was dummying The Miz. Even I saw WrestleMania highlights this weekend.
I saw some of it on Saturday. I didn't realize it was like a multiple night thing.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying. Like the fact that even clips got to me, like I feel like is a testament to how big an event this thing is. And Robert said it was one of the most successful events from a it's not SummerSlam. What is this again? WrestleMania.
Yeah.
From a WrestleMania night-by-night event that he's seen, and I know he consumes his stuff at a massive level. So maybe we'll talk about that if Robert shows up.
It was on late last night, and I chose bed. But tonight, I'm worried about how many people will choose bed over basketball.
People are going to choose bed over basketball.
Because what is this? 8:45 tip?
No, that's trash.
That's terrible.
It is truly the worst. Now, I wonder.
It says 8:30, but it's not going to tip off at 8:30.
There's no way. And you imagine being on the East Coast.
My goodness.
They just, people aren't there. They're going to lose the entire Eastern Seaboard.
Like they're hitting the first media timeout, and it's like past 10 o'clock over there.
I love the idea that the women's game yesterday started at like 3. That was ideal.
Yeah, can we normalize that?
I would love that. Because I had the rest of my my afternoon and evening basically to do as I wanted before prime time. And I'd watched one of the best sporting events of the year, even if the final score was not indicative of a competitive basketball game. LSU dog-walked Iowa yesterday. It was a dominant performance, 102-85. They just made it the Caitlin Clark show, but that was about it. And really not in the fourth quarter if you look at how she kind of faded away. And they were a one-dimensional team at the end of it. Their post player gotten Sonozo, I believe is the last name.
She fouled out.
She fouled out. Caitlin Clark got in foul trouble early as well watching this game. So it really limited what Iowa was able to do. And the officiating, I thought, on both sides was garbage. Just terrible. Truly terrible in ways that I cannot, I don't want to waste more time on, even though that was probably one of the most impactful things to come out of this game. But the thing that's got everybody talking about this women's natty last night, and we'll have our friend Madison Blevins now at Bally Sports. She was working the women's Final Four for the NCAA, as a matter of fact. So we'll talk to Mads at 11:45. Been a while since we've had her on the show. But the thing that's got everybody bent out of shape is Angel Reese. The star of, one of several stars, I think, for LSU's national championship winning team now. You have Kim Mulkey turning this thing around from a 9-win program 2 years ago when she took over to a national championship 30 5+ win team.
First national championship in program history.
Men's or women's. And she's from the state of Louisiana. You could tell how caught up she was. This is her 4th championship, 3 with Baylor, now 1 with LSU. But Angel Reese is the talking point today, right? Because what happened after they knew the game was in hand? Well, they show the camera shots of Kim Mulkey on the sideline sobbing, and then what do they go right to? Because, of course, it's the most noticeable thing. It's Angel Reese, who has 16 second-half points after not being terribly active from a scoring standpoint in the first half, and it's Angel Reese doing the John Cena, get out my face, hand in front of their face wave to Caitlin Clark, because Caitlin Clark had been doing that during the tournament, pointing at a ring finger. Angel Reese, the Joe Burrow thing, when she knows she's got the natty in hand, she's doing it. She's following Caitlin Clark around the court. And immediately, the sportsmanship police descend from the 7th circle, I guess ascend from the 7th circle of hell in sports discussions to tell me how trash and classless LSU is. You got the Bama people saying, oh, typical LSU fans, trash, classless, blah, blah, blah. You got people pearl clutching because, oh, God forbid, somebody show competitive spirit out there on the basketball court when Caitlin Clark has been lauded for it all year long. What was one of the biggest moments of their Final Four? It was an upset, right, South Carolina? They were not favored in that
South
game.
Carolina was undefeated to that point.
Correct.
Clear cut, number 1 overall seed. I mean, the pre-tournament talk in the women's tournament was South Carolina and everybody else.
So it was hilarious to me to see Caitlin Clark, thought of the baddest out there. By the way, a badass, just a certified badass. And I hate it for her that she can't go to the WNBA draft after her junior year. I didn't know that was a rule until yesterday, that they can't be drafted into the professional league until after their senior season. That seems awful to me. But so selfishly, we get Caitlin Clark back for another year. But Angel Reese becomes the talking point because she's the one out there talking trash. You guys know my position on this. I feel like we've gotten complaints about my position on this. I'm not here for your sportsmanship. I don't care. If you want to stop the trash talk, beat her. Those are the only rules. That's the only rule trash talk has. You know who else will tell you that? Probably Caitlin Clark. My DMs and my mentions last night were filled with messages like this. This is from, let me pull up the DM on Instagram that I got, because I put up a highlight on my story. This is from, who is it? Patricia Cunningham? Patty Cunningham on Instagram. Sent me a DM responding to the Angel Reese clip, just saying, no class, trash. You know what kind of loser mentality that is to me? Trash talk has no rules. Any competitive person in that arena in particular will tell you that. I saw Keith Bullock tweeting about it this morning, if you want to put it in football context. Keith Bullock, Mr. Monday Night, one of the most famous, one of the most competitive players that the Tennessee Titans organization has ever had. And you know whose side he's on? Angel Reese. At Cable53. Damn, I wake up to all these grown-ass men on my timeline talking to me about sportsmanship and class. Y'all are such sensitive softies. Ain't no rules to trash talk. If you talk the talk, you got to walk the walk, period. There's no color to it. If Caitlin Clark talks trash, I mean, she got a technical that I thought was garbage for not even saying anything. And
the officiating was awful.
I mean, my God. So
it was like the officials got together and noticed the collective improvement of Final Four and just women's tournament ratings in general, because it was huge this year.
It's been honestly the talk of the last couple of weekends, the women's bracket, not the men's.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people are watching the South Carolina-Iowa game had a massive number on it. And, I mean, what was the stat even going in that the Iowa-Louisville Elite Eight game had more viewers than any singular NBA game this season?
No. On ESPN.
On ESPN.
On ESPN specifically. But still, I mean, but not by a small margin. Like the women's game blew. It was like a Knicks Celtics game on ESPN that the Iowa-South Carolina game Iowa-Louisville game just blew the doors off of. It wasn't close.
Yeah, so it's like the officials got together and said, okay, guys, there's more eyeballs on this. It's our time. All right, ready? Break.
It always makes me laugh.
Let's put on a show.
Anytime somebody tweets out, in quotes, it's ref time, the refs, saying that as their inner monologue. But yeah, the amount of people salty about Angel Reese strutting her stuff, pointing at a ring finger, doing the John Cena to Caitlin Clark when Caitlin Clark's been doing the John Cena all tournament long. Man, get out of here. Angel Reese was asked about this because, of course, she was still doing it on the podium with Holly Rowe, who was giving away awarding the trophy. This was Angel Reese on the ESPN set after winning the national championship over Iowa yesterday.
Were you sitting on the...
Oh, I was waiting.
How long were you sitting on
I tell you, I was waiting. Me?
At what point were you waiting to pull out this?
Man.
Kind of the Caitlin Clark?
Caitlin Clark is a hell of a
incredible
player for sure. But I don't take disrespect lightly. And she disrespected Alexis and my girls. South Carolina, they still my SEC girls too. But y'all not going to disrespect them either. So I wanted to pick her pocket, but I had a moment at the end of the game, and I was in my bag. I was in my moment. Yeah.
Hell yeah, she was. Good for her. And if you don't like it, beat her. I hope Caitlin Clark has a senior season unlike any other because she remembers Angel Reese doing the John Cena in her face during those final free throw moments when the national championship was in hand for LSU. When Caitlin Clark got that close, I hope it creates one of the best women's college basketball seasons that we've ever seen because she's a competitor, and that stuff is used as fuel. So the amount of honestly, I don't even think people are that angry about this stuff. I think they just look at things to complain about because they don't like the way that a person carries themselves in certain moments. Okay, tough. Win. Did you see the bigger quote? Did you see after they handed her the most outstanding player award, Angel Reese? Did you see the quote to come out of that?
Did not.
All year I was critiqued for who I was. I don't fit the narrative. I don't fit the box that y'all want me to be in. I'm too hood. I'm too ghetto. Y'all told me that all year when other people do it and y'all don't say nothing. So this is for the girls that look like me, for those that want to speak up for what they believe in. It's unapologetically you, and that's what I did before tonight. It was bigger than me tonight, and Twitter is going to go into a rage every time. That's somebody that's very, very comfortable in their own skin and is out there doing the damn thing. And then getting dragged as something for people with repressed opinions about sports or other things to complain about. Poor sportsmanship, poor sport. Be better, be a winner. She is. If you don't like it, go beat her. 615-737-1045. Kay Oldham says, I think trash talk is a sign of weakness. Apparently not. It was worth a 102-85 blowout. So. And there wasn't anything weak about her second half performance last night. I'm not somebody who can tell you what it's like to compete at the highest levels as a college or professional athlete. You'll have to rely on Blaine or Slay or Ramon for that. But I do think that the people who get out there with that kind of way of thinking are soft. Soft. And if the athletes aren't going to get bent out of shape about it, why are you? Let's get into a discussion about something that people were bent out of shape about over the weekend. Big Jeff's agent, Jeffrey Simmons, Titans in trying to figure out a contract extension for their star defensive tackle. Some messaging from Jeff's agent that had everybody buzzing this weekend. We'll talk about it coming up next. All right, so we got an update? Are we even calling it that? On Jeff Simmons, I don't know what to make of this, but we're going to talk about it anyway. So Jeff Simmons' contract extension is one of the biggest talking points of the Titans offseason, yeah? And Rand Carthon, I think that an opportunity to define his Titans general manager tenure is very much in the giant meat hook-sized hands of Jeff Simmons at this stage. Because if Rand Carthon isn't able to get the Jeffrey Simmons deal done, then immediately he's fighting uphill. From an optics standpoint, from a competitive balance standpoint, it would be really hard to not hyper-scrutinize every other move that he makes, right, wrong, or indifferent, if they're not able to again retain one of the most talented players on the team. It was not the exclusive reason that John Robinson was fired, but it certainly was an accumulation of acquiring talent that, for one reason or another, not just A.J. Brown, they were unable to keep. Now, Jeff's agent, and it's not quite a Lamar Jackson situation. It's a much more, I don't want to call it boutique agency, but it's not like one of these mega monster like CAAs or WMGs or Athletes First, right? One of these giant agency shops that represents everybody from Derrick Henry to Coca-Cola to Robert De Niro.
It's like a mom and pop.
Little bit.
It's not Starbucks. It's your coffee store on the corner.
It's my farmer's market coffee stand that I like to go on Saturday mornings. And they just happen to be representing a 305-pound defensive tackle instead of getting me my favorite dark chocolate mint latte. So good. But Jeff, his agent, posts a video. I don't want to describe it as cryptic. Cryptic seems a bit dramatic, no? But it says of the and we're not going to play the video because it's just music and a bunch of clips of Jeff Simmons like making plays, but more of his agent like on the phone calling around making deals. Which, by the way, I'm here for the agent's name is Paul D. Roussel. I hope I'm saying the last name correctly, but Paul, listen, this is the me of agents because I would absolutely make us put together a hype video for the radio show and embarrass both Lucas and Robert in ways that made them uncomfortable and that were purely for clout. I'm here for it. But he puts together this video of him and Jeff, him on the phone, him signing contracts, him in the boardroom, and Jeff making plays on the field. And the tweet says, I can say this with complete confidence. Our window is unequivocally Jeff's entire career, and I stand on that. What does that mean? Because a bunch of Titans fans tweeted him and were asking, like, so does this mean we're getting a deal done with Jeff? And he was just like, no. No. Or, something to the effect of, nah, you're good. Okay, well, what does it mean? I have no idea how to interpret for you the quote. I can say this with complete confidence. Our window is unequivocally Jeff's entire career, and I stand on that. Window for what? Window to make money? Window to start a business? Jeff, we've seen agents who represent big-name clients turn that into momentum. I think David Muguleta, whose last name always gives me difficulty, the agent of Kevin Byard, Deshaun Watson, Landon Collins was famously a client. David Long is an Athletes First client. Like David Muguleta has turned this into quite a roster of talent and built a business out of it at Athletes First. Now maybe Paul D. Roussel wants to do the same thing, and Jeff is the crown jewel right now for all this stuff. But I think that. I think as Titans fans sit here and wait for Jeff Simmons news, the best thing for Jeff is that he's not on social media. He deleted his social media accounts. He's removed all mention of the Titans on Instagram in particular previously and said that he would prefer a new deal prior to taking the field in 2023. So I think an interesting wrinkle to this is the report from Daniel Jeremiah and at some point, Robert, if you could get Lucas that audio, that the Titans have been sniffing around the 3rd overall pick. It would be hard to imagine a situation for me in which the Titans trade up for 3rd overall, given that they only have 6 draft picks in this year's draft, without a high percentage chance that a deal includes Jeff. If they didn't want to do that deal, if they got to the point in A.J. Brown-like discussions where they didn't feel like it was progressing the way that they wanted to, they felt like they could get better bang for their buck and get a franchise quarterback out of it. I think a lot of people would, are not crazy about the idea of them trading up to 3rd overall just anyway, much less an idea that a package might include Jeff. And again, this is just speculation on my part, but it would be difficult to imagine them having good enough value to go to number 3 with a deal that didn't include Jeff on an expiring contract. Now, I think another interesting thing with all of this is Kevin Byard. Because we've talked about the idea that Kevin Byard, his pay cut discussions, them asking him to take a pay cut, did not go the way that the organization reportedly wanted it to. And Kevin Byard has decided that his services are worth the amount of money that they're currently being valued at, as is his right contractually. Could the organization put together a package that involved Kevin Byard for Arizona that made the 11th overall pick, Kevin Byard, and another pick more feasible to do when the Titans don't necessarily have the draft capital ammo to go up just with picks alone, the way that San Francisco did a couple of years ago? I'm fascinated to see what direction they go, because I think there's a variety of different options on the table. I don't know that there's any team in the NFL, maybe the two of you or maybe a caller could name one, 615-737-1045, that feels more choose your own adventure than the Titans at this point, at a variety of different positions, where it relates to Jeff's contract, this upcoming draft, the quarterback position. What are you doing with Derrick Henry? There's so many different options on the table for them to choose with all kinds of different outcomes, and I really have no idea what they're going to do under a new general manager at the very least. Oldham says, please clarify, Buck, is it a pay cut or a deferment? My understanding was a pay cut based on the reporting that Adam Schefter did, that he was asked to take a pay cut and said no. And then Malik Willis's presence in all of this, if you are theoretically exploring a trade up for number 3, can you move him at all? Would Monty Ossenford in Arizona be interested in Malik Willis as a backup? I think that makes a ton of sense behind Kyler Murray if you think that the skill set for Malik has the potential to translate. I think there's any number of options on the table for them, but I don't know necessarily how to describe the Jeff Simmons agent tweet. Cryptic seems right, but also I think it just might be a hype video that everybody's starting to get bent out of shape about because they have seen little to no movement on a new deal, or a new extension rather, for Jeffrey Simmons. You're racing against the clock in the same way that the quarterback market is. You've got Quentin Williams out there, who's going to seek a deal from the Jets and probably is going to make more money than Jeff. You would like to beat that to market before the ceiling gets automatically raised. And right now, Rand Carthon, I think, has the ability to lose the fan base very, very quickly in his tenure if he can't find a way to get that deal done. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. Jeff in Nashville is first. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, but, one of the things that I've always kind of had a problem with Oilers/Titans, because I'm from the Houston area, it's always been a defensive-minded team. And anytime you get good offensive coordinators, a la Arthur Smith and the guy that coaches the Packers now, they end up leaving. And so you never get continuity in the offense like when you get with Kansas City, when you get the offensive-minded coaches. We have a defensive-minded team. And so every time you try and go get that quarterback, he's never supported. Or he might be supported for a year and then somebody's gone. You find a good one and all of a sudden somebody's offering up cash. This team's got to start figuring out whether it wants to be an offensive-minded team or, because that's what wins the league now. Defense doesn't win championships anymore. Offense does. Thanks. I'll hang up and listen.
Thanks for the call. Hit us with a hang up and listen. Always makes you happy on a Monday. Here's my thing. I would draft all offensive players. I wouldn't even play defense. I'm looking at the Bengals. I'm looking at the Bills, the Titans, the Ravens. Anybody else who doesn't have a Patrick Mahomes and just being like, figure out a way to score 35. I don't care if you give up 34 in the process. Just figure out a way to score 35 to give you a chance to try and stay with the Chiefs. Now, of course, you can't do that. And you do require some semblance of defensive play to be able to compete. But I would rather have a top 5 offense and a top 25 defense than the other way around, which is typically the way that this team likes to exist. And last year, the defense fell off a cliff because of all the injuries. 32nd in passing defense. So the defense wasn't even that good. And the pass rush got banged up, and Jeff and Autry missed time. Bud in and out of the lineup. Harold missing an entire season. Like, there's reasons it looked the way that it did that are fair to say or fair to assume that a 7-game losing streak is more the anomaly as opposed to the rule. But they're an offensive-minded team. It's just that the offensive philosophy is not an offensive philosophy that you guys agree with. Run the damn ball. Run left. Well, I guess not run left anymore. But Derrick Henry run the damn ball first and second down and figure it out on third. Now, maybe that changes with Todd Downing. Again, tendencies. But as long as Mike Vrabel is the head coach, I don't disagree with Jeff. The philosophical approach of Mike is going to be the approach that the coordinators are working under. And you'll have guys who succeed with that in that system or under that setup. Arthur did. You'll have guys who fail, like Todd Downing. LaFleur really wasn't a success here, but the Marcus Mariota kind of baggage around that season, I think, makes the evaluation of LaFleur a bit different, where you've seen the success, and you could argue that LaFleur does not have that success with quarterbacks not named Aaron Rodgers, but he's in the situation that he's in, and he's had the success that he's had. So you have to give him credit for that, certainly. And Matt's a good coach. I don't know that as long as Mike Vrabel's the head coach here, that your approach is going to stray very much from what you've seen, because the offense has largely stayed consistent. You want continuity? I give you continuity. They give you continuity with your offensive approach. The coordinators change, but the offense, that's the consistent thing. Let's go to Derek in Clarksville next. Hey, Derek.
Hey, Buck, what's up, man? Love your show. I used to only listen to the 3 o'clock reel until you got on here. But here's my take, man. If they're going to go to try to trade up to 3, and you're talking about including Jeff Simmons in a trade, why wouldn't they offer that to the Ravens for Lamar Jackson? Because you're already going to lose CJ, and whatever the
Young,
kid from Alabama. He's gone. CJ's gone. It's a project with Anthony. Will Levis is same thing, I guess. So if you have a sure thing in Lamar, if you're going to do all this, why would you offer that to the Ravens for Lamar Jackson? I'll hang up and listen.
Thanks for the call. So Lamar's situation is weird. Robert, is Robert back there, or is he taking another cigarette break? He literally showed up in there for 5 minutes just to take another cigarette break.
No, he's getting work done.
I don't believe you.
He has things to do.
I don't think that's true. I just expect him, in the same way that I can send him to the shadows anytime I see him, I expect him to also emerge from the shadows anytime I need him.
You just think he's here for your entertainment.
I do think that. And also, I physically can't see him. Like, the sight lines in my seat are terrible.
No, you are like the 10th most important thing he has on his list whenever he walks in here.
That hurts. But the latest on Lamar is that he's not signed his tender, which means that the Ravens cannot yet move him under the terms of the non-exclusive franchise tag, which is the tag that they have chosen to place on him. Now, the Ravens can move him at any point, and I would argue that Lamar is a more proven commodity. I would favor Lamar over trading up for the 3rd overall pick. If you're going to mortgage right now for a franchise quarterback, then I agree with the caller. Mortgage for what you know rather than for what you might project.
I mean, the Niners gave up, what was the compensation for Lance?
3 first-round picks.
Multiple first-round picks.
Which was a 12th overall, so similar to the Titans. The Titans are picking 11. The Niners in that 2021 draft picked 12th, and the trade up was 4-3 overall, which was Miami at the time. That cost the Niners 3 first-round picks in 3 consecutive drafts and a 2022 third-round pick, which became Matt Corral. So that's 4 valuable draft picks. And the players that that Miami was, Miami flipped a couple of those picks because I think we went through this scenario at some point last week. But again, just to kind of repeat who those players turned into, if Arizona was to do this, no matter who it was that they were trading with, if they do it correctly, they can change the fortunes of their franchise. 12 overall ended up with the Cowboys because the Dolphins traded with the Eagles, and then the Eagles traded the pick to the Cowboys. That became Micah Parsons, who is now a defensive rookie of the year and potentially discussed as an MVP candidate. Miami used one of those first-round picks in the Tyreek Hill trade. It became Cole Strange for the offensive lineman for the New England Patriots. The third-round pick, as I mentioned, became Matt Corral, and they traded one of the first-round picks, Miami did, for Bradley Chubb, who was formerly of the Broncos. So those are legitimately big-time players that Miami was able to turn around and turn into more assets as a part of their rebuilding process. Arizona has the ability to do the same. That's why it's almost a guarantee that Arizona and former Titans front office exec Monty Ossenfort does not pick at 3.
It would be malpractice.
Put it on a poll. Bigger malpractice for the Cardinals this year, signing Dennis Daly to a 2-year deal, or
if they don't trade out of the 3rd pick.
Or however you want to phrase it, if they don't trade out of number 3.
But if you're talking about it from a Titans perspective, so then, signing Lamar Jackson would require sending 2 firsts to the Ravens no matter what. And then you're talking about multiple first-round picks, likely, at minimum, multiple first-round picks to move up to 3. So then you're between a giant quarterback contract for a proven commodity in Lamar Jackson or doing what every NFL team wants to do now, which is a talented young quarterback on a rookie contract, allowing you to be able to afford building around him.
Here's what it's easier to do. It's easier to get the rookie quarterback and try and figure it out. Honestly, I think it's a faster process.
It's easier to make that work, sure.
Yes. Rather than take on
as far as the financials go.
I'm talking about the idea of team building. It is easier to get the rookie quarterback contract in place, whether you're going to get lucky like the Eagles did and have a Jalen Hurts where it's a second rounder and you have even more financial flexibility to build around him, or you're going to do what the Titans are trying to do or exploring the idea of doing, which is trading up in this year's draft and trying to plug in the pieces around him because they're going to have a bleep ton of salary cap next year.
Chad on YouTube says giant contract kind of undersells what Lamar is asking for. That's fair. Market-setting quarterback contract. That is what he is asking for.
Market-setting guaranteed money contract.
Yes.
Not fully guaranteed, more guaranteed money than Deshaun Watson
That is
got.
the bottom line of what he wants. He wants more guaranteed money than has been given to any quarterback in NFL history.
Alvin in Nashville is next. Hey, Alvin.
How you doing?
Good.
I got a question for you. What is everybody's goal, all 32 teams, to make the Super Bowl, correct?
Typically,
so my question to you is, with the Titans' current roster, do you think that they're a playoff team?
No.
Okay. So why are we keeping Ryan Tannehill? I mean, just to say what, above 500? I mean,
well, you asked me about the current roster, Alvin. They don't have a draft class yet. I mean, you're asking me about the current roster. Yeah, the free agency moves don't make them Super Bowl contenders.
Even if you bring in the draft class, you gonna make it with the playoffs with the draft class?
You have no idea what that draft class is going to be. That's a completely and totally off the wall. Like, I can't give you a good answer on that. You can't give me a good answer to that. You know what I'm saying?
What team that you know that took a draft class and went to the Super Bowl?
Took a draft class and went to the Super Bowl? What do you mean? You could name any team that went to the Super Bowl that had a draft class.
Rephrase that,
what?
Alvin. I don't think that's where you're going.
That a draft class single-handedly took them to the Super Bowl? That's not how that sport works.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. With the current roster we got, we're not even going to the Super Bowl. So what is the point?
Okay, he's saying a non-competitive roster getting a good draft class and taking that jump to the Super Bowl.
Okay, I don't think they're non-competitive. You just asked me if right now they got a Super Bowl winning roster, and the right answer is no. What?
I mean, that's
Alvin. It's April 3rd.
Although I will say that's pretty much what the Bengals did. Took a non-competitive team, had a great draft, and went to the Super Bowl. It's what the Bengals did.
Okay.
What they win Joe Burrow's rookie year. I know he tore the ACL, but
four games. One of them was the Titans.
Yeah. So I guess that is it's obviously an anomaly, but the Bengals did do that.
I mean, without having I'm sure I could go if I went year by year in a way that would make for god awful radio. Theoretically, we could do that, but one, it doesn't exist that way. That a draft class single-handedly vaults you to the Super Bowl. If one comes with a quarterback, though, the Bengals did show that a draft class with the rookie quarterback in place, the contract, and some veteran pieces that were fundamentally sound, yes, you can elevate that quarterback in a very early in his tenure. If the deal is cheap and you hit right on the next draft class, yeah, you could sure as hell go to the Super Bowl. Ryan Tannehill is Jimmy Garoppolo, is, replacement level starting quarterback X. Those dudes play in Super Bowls all the time. All the time. It's just a matter of can you build the roster correctly around them to make it less about the quarterback than, 31 other teams who don't have a Patrick Mahomes to just physically will them to the championship game. Madison Blevins of Bally Sports has been covering the Final Four. There was a lot of storylines resulting out of the national championship yesterday for the women. The national championship in the men's bracket coming up tonight between UConn and San Diego State. So we'll talk some hoops with Mads coming up next. Welcome back to the show. Titans in exploring the idea of trading up potentially. Got some Daniel Jeremiah audio on that for you here in just a little bit. But it is the conclusion of the college basketball season tonight on the men's side of things. Women's Final Four and national championship concluding over the weekend as well. A lot of exciting results so far throughout the course of the tournament. A less than exciting result, I guess, in terms of scoring or margin of victory in the women's final last night, but a lot of talking points coming out of LSU's blowout victory over Iowa. Our friend Madison Blevins, who is now at Bally Sports, was covering it for the NCAA.
Sorry, Madison who?
That's not funny.
You can't precede something by saying my friend and then getting a name wrong.
What are you laughing about over there? What's
My
so funny
name
to you?
has been Madison Hock
I
for
know.
a year and a half now, Buck. A year and a half.
Okay, but this is the problem, Mads. Like all of our friends, you have been married for a considerable amount of time. I'm sorry, Colton. I deeply apologize. I don't change people's names in my phone after they get married. So like all my friends from high school and college, everybody's got their same last names, and then I get confused why I get names wrong.
That's okay. I'll let it slide this time, but my name is Madison Hock for everyone listening.
On Twitter at
Madison Hock.
Okay, there it is. Hock. You were there for the Final Four. You covered the national championship game last night. On the women's side of things, how much did you enjoy the atmosphere first and foremost, and then if you could speak to the competitiveness of these games?
Yeah, well, first off, Buck, thanks for having me on. I love that the women's game is getting so much national attention today, and I love that you guys are talking about it too. And I think that that's kind of where we're at with women's college basketball now. And this weekend was a huge testament to how these women can play. It was so much fun. I was at the Final Four covering it and then the national championship game yesterday. And, I mean, they set attendance records. American Airlines Center in Dallas was completely sold out for every game on Friday and for the national championship yesterday. I mean, there was not an empty seat. It was so loud. And I was courtside, and just to look up and see that many people supporting the women's game was so cool to see. And I thought Holly Rowe had a really cool tweet. She tweeted a picture of the outside of the AAC, people watching the game that couldn't even get into the game because it was a sellout. And she said, if you build it, they will come. And I think that that's so true. I mean, and then you look at the talent that was on the court this weekend. I was telling someone at the game yesterday, I don't remember a Final Four with that much talent on the women's side of things in a long time. And it was just so much fun to watch. The games on Friday were so competitive, and to see, you know, I'm not going to lie, going into it, I thought it was going to be a South Carolina repeat. They just, you know, they were 42-0 and a long win streak, and they just kind of seemed like they were not going to fall. And then to see Caitlin Clark go off and you know, upset South Carolina, it was just really cool to see the way that women's college basketball fans and college basketball fans in general support Caitlin Clark, and kind of how she's just been electric all over the national media lately. And then, of course, we get to the national championship game yesterday, which, you know, I know you guys were talking about the competitive aspect of it, and a lot has gained national attention today on Angel Reese and quote unquote the smack talk. But hey, here's the thing. These girls can ball. And if this was the NBA, we wouldn't even blink an eye on this back and forth. And keep in mind, Caitlin Clark, who arguably is the best college basketball player this year, men's or women's. And I'm not the only one to say that. I know that's a bold statement, but Charles Barkley mentioned that, and just kind of the caliber that she's playing at. All respect to her. She was also doing the taunting against Louisville and against South Carolina. And, you know, people didn't really blink an eye. And then to see Angel Reese, a dominant player. I mean, we're talking 34 double-doubles this year alone, NCAA tournament record. it has just been incredible to see Angel Reese, what she has been able to do at LSU. So we've got to give her credit. And I hate that the storyline has become, oh, Angel Reese taunting Caitlin Clark. It's like, no, just let these girls play how they want to play and be competitive because it's fun. It's so much fun, right? And to have multiple, national media, people who don't even really cover women's basketball to be talking about the game today, I think that's pretty cool.
Madison Hock is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Bally Sports is where you can see her coverage. You're doing baseball, you're doing basketball, you're doing all of it over there at Bally right now.
Yeah, they keep me busy, and I'm happy and I'm thankful for every opportunity. But yep, I do pre and post game shows for the New Orleans Pelicans and Bally Sports New Orleans. Then I do Rangers on Bally Sports Southwest, do a little Mavs as well. So it's been really fun being in Dallas the last 6 months.
You said you thought it was going to be South Carolina. South Carolina, I'm sure, taking their first loss of the season in the Final Four, probably also thought it was going to be South Carolina. What did you make of Dawn Staley's comments when she was asked about her team's truth and had I don't want to call it a rant, but was definitely sending a message to some people that she felt had made unfair commentary about her team?
Hey, Coach Staley can say whatever she wants because she's one of the best coaches in the game. And I did hear that, and it's unfortunate that there has been a negative narrative around that team. And, I think it's really cool. Even Angel Reese said in one of her post-game interviews that part of the reason she was so passionate and doing the things that she was doing was because she was defending South Carolina. She said, yeah, we're competitive with them, but those are my SEC girls. And she kind of jumped to their defense as well. But Coach Staley, Dawn Staley calls out what she sees. She's just very transparent, and she has the credibility to do that. And I think it probably woke up a lot of the national media, her saying that what they're saying and what they think is behind closed doors is not really behind closed doors. And I think a lot of people in the women's game get a lot of criticism, and we're seeing that with Angel Reese, just how passionate she is. And, I was never the caliber of player of Angel Reese, but I was passionate. I did my fair share of smack talk, but you guys know the character of myself, and I would hate for somebody to be writing about false things because of the passion that I displayed on the basketball court. It's two separate things, right? You can have class, you can be a great competitor, but you can also have fun with it, and you can trash talk a little bit. And then the second you step off the court, you can be a respectful young woman. And I think that was Dawn Staley's point, is don't write things about her team that you don't know if that's true or not. And she is a coach that I respect in the sense she always jumps to her players' defense. So I think it's cool if, as a player, to know that your coach always has your back in that regard.
At Madison Hock, she's a trash talker. You can find her on Bally Sports, covering the Pelicans and the Rangers now that baseball season is upon us. Get out of here. I hate that you're good at these interviews now. You're gotten a lot better at it, and it pisses me off.
I don't really trash talk much anymore, but only with you. So I do miss you guys. I miss you guys in Nashville, and y'all keep crushing it. Thanks for having me on.
All right, girl. I'll see you soon. That's Madison Hock with us on 104.5 The Zone. Get into some stuff from Vols Pro Day coming up next.
It is 12:04. Good afternoon from the Superbook.com Sports Desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. It is officially draft month. The NFL draft coming up at the end of April. A little bit of draft-related news today involving a former Vol, as Ian Rappaport reports that Hendon Hooker will travel and have an official meeting with the New Orleans Saints this week. Tonight, after a weekend series win over the Nationals, the Braves are at the St. Louis Cardinals. First pitch is at 8:45, and the Preds playoff push continues tonight at the Dallas Stars. Puck drop is at 7:30. Preds are 5 points back of the Jets with 2 games in hand for that final playoff spot in the Western Conference. The national championship game in the men's basketball tournament is tonight. San Diego State taking on UConn in Houston. They'll tip it off at 8:30. You can hear the Westwood One call right here on The Zone. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour on a Monday. Happy to have you guys here with Robert, Lucas, and myself. Just about 55 more minutes to go before we turn you over to Blaine and Mickey. Hope you had a great weekend if you're just now popping on, wherever you're spending time with us today. Vols Pro Day on, Thursday, I believe. Florida had their Pro Day on the same day. We had some of the highlights and discussed a little bit with Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News-Sentinel, but we have not yet talked about some of the results, some of the discussions that came out of the Pro Day that was held at the Anderson Training Center last week. So you had a bunch of players, not just the draftable ones. The 5 players who we think are going to be draft picks at this point, Hendon, in no particular order, by the way. Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, Darnell Wright, Byron Young. Then you've got guys like Chase McGrath, Jeremy Banks, Paxton Brooks, I know, was there doing some stuff. You've got Latrell Bumpus, Jerome Carvin, Princeton Fant, and Trayvon Flowers round out the group that was participating in the Tennessee Pro Day.
Dresser Wynn was throwing to them, the Tennessee Martin quarterback, because obviously Hendon Hooker, who was there with the brace on his knee and was throwing it around.
He did a little bit of stuff, but obviously like very, very premature, just kind of, stationary.
Yeah, I do think it was good for him to be there and doing those things because the recovery has been pretty quick for Hooker. And he talked to reporters after Pro Day, said his goal is to start dropping back next week, and his goal is to be able to run straight line in 3 weeks. And this was on Thursday, so about 2.5 weeks from now.
So I think a lot of people were surprised to see Jerome Carvin not get invited to the Combine.
He was.
That was invited to the Combine?
He was surprised that he didn't get the invite.
Like, what?
He was not at the Combine.
Okay, I was confused. I know he was one of them at the East-West Shrine game. And so Pro Day was a big opportunity for both Carvin and I think Princeton Fant, who is another one of these bubble type of Combine draft pick players, where you could see them potentially latching on at some point in the 7 rounds. But I think the observations to come out of that, there wasn't anything shockingly different, I think, from Pro Day to Combine for the guys who participated at Combine and Pro Day particularly.
Yeah, Hyatt did not run the 40. He stuck with his Combine 40 time, which I was a little bit surprised by.
I mean, it was a really good Combine 40 time.
It was a good maybe the expectations were set too high for him going in.
By who?
Oh, by him, by people talking about it. Every time Jalen Hyatt was asked about the 40 at his Combine media availability, it was kind of a smirk and a wink and like, oh, you'll see. Oh, just wait. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh my God, he's going to run a 4.11 or something. And
sub 4.
Yeah. What did he end up running? Like a 4? It was sub 4.5?
It was sub 4.5.
Yeah, so that's fast. That's good. And Jalen Hyatt has plenty of tape to show that he's fast. But I don't know. I thought he might want to maybe take a couple hundredths or tenths of a second off of that if possible.
I don't know. I think they get to a good place with it where they just look around and say, I don't know. I think I'm set on that. Now, somebody who I do think it matters for is Byron Young, who ran the 4.340 at his Combine And, I mean, that was shockingly, like that's money moves type of numbers difference between a guy who was thought of as, I think, largely a day 2 pick, still probably a day 2 pick at this point. But if you're going to make people think about it, it's going to show that you are lightning fast off the edge. Now, I don't think he's actually a 4.3 speed. Feels unfair of me to do that. Despite it being an unofficial time, I think that's just that's tough for me to imagine that Byron Young is all of a sudden a 4.3 40 type of player. And with Nolan Smith like just right ahead of him at that point. But I think to see the different results coming out of the pro day, I don't think anybody's status has drastically changed. Now, 5 of the 13 players who were present did run the 40. You had Cedric Tillman, Jerome Carvin, Bumpus. Is it Salon Page?
Salon Page.
I always butcher that name. And then Maurice Smith were 5 of the 13 who did run the 40. But I think a lot of these, the unofficial time on Cedric Tillman was 3.89, which of course,
wow,
yeah, is not a reasonable expectation for what it is that somebody at Cedric Tillman's size should be moving.
They forgot to start the timer.
That's correct. He was about 20 yards into the foot. No, that's not fair. But
he was a few yards in when they started the timer. So just go with
it. We're here now. But that was funny to see coming out of the social media around it. Mike Vrabel was there while Rand Carthon was at his alma mater, Florida. Both were present at Ohio State's Pro Day a couple day previous. Now, Hendon Hooker, of course, was present. Hendon Hooker's best features, particularly his intangibles, are on display because all he's doing right now is interviews and a little bit of stationary throwing in the background, just enough for people to take Bigfoot Twitter videos and put them out on social media.
He is headed to New Orleans this week.
According to Lucas Panzica's breaking news update that did indicate New Orleans, who's selecting, I believe, 29th overall in this year's draft, will have the opportunity to explore adding a quarterback to their room behind Derek Carr. This was Hendon Hooker, though, at the media availability after the Vols Pro Day.
It's always funny to hear people talk about our offense, but it's a lot of intricacies that go into what we do and how we do it. It's a lot of things that you have to process. So the mental side of the game is at an all-time high. The physical side of the game, it looks easy because we make it look easy. It's not because it's just easy.
So I don't disagree with that. And by the way, if an NFL team's smart for Hyatt and Hooker and Tillman, outside of just conventional NFL, I don't want to say that football scheming is conventional, but largely everybody's running a lot of the same plays and just calling them different things. Would it not be wise, even though the geography on the college field is different than the pros as far as the spacing is concerned, would it not be wise to incorporate some of what the University of Tennessee was doing? If that's the best version of Tillman, Hyatt, Hooker, something, I just think that makes a lot of sense. Remember Tony Romo talking about NFL teams sniffing around Josh Heupel?
Yeah.
Trickle-up effect is a real thing. And I don't, listen, I'm not doing the could the NFL take Josh Heupel away from Tennessee show. That's not what I'm implying at all. I'm just saying that more and more, as coaches become a little more open to it, younger, just they're not as married to their specific philosophical tendencies as they are trying to put players in the best possible positions to succeed. If the question is about the system that they're running, then why not find ways to implement some of what the system that they were running?
My biggest question about the Hooker narrative on Tennessee's offense. So some of the things that you've said are problem areas for him or points of concern for Hendon Hooker. Could you just rehash like 2 of the bullet points?
In the offense, he very rarely gets off his first read.
Yeah.
Whether he's able to go through progressions or not is a different discussion. Right. But you don't see it on film. Now, I think sometimes he's late on throws. That I think has an effect because of the half-field reads that they're asking him to make. I also think that he's gotten better about pocket presence, but that I'm not crazy about it when I watch him.
I'll stick with what I do think are the biggest points of concern, and that's throwing guys open, being able to scan the field, right, going through those progressions and reads. And then you look at Anthony Richardson, biggest points of concern, accuracy, touch, erratic decision-making. But the overwhelming school of thought is, well, his tangibles and his measurables and his athleticism are so off the charts, we can work with the rest. While with a guy like Hendon Hooker, who produced at such a high level and who has the measurables and the tangibles and the athleticism, not the superhuman version of an Anthony Richardson, but he has all of those things. Mm-hmm. Why is that not the narrative of, well, we can coach him through the progressions and the reads? We know he can produce because we saw him do it at a very high level at Tennessee for 2 years. We didn't see that from Anthony Richardson, but because he's so athletic, we're gonna gamble on that and trust that we can instill the right decision-making and accuracy tendencies in Richardson. Like, why would that not be the conversation with Hooker? Saying, yeah, there's these concerns, but look at this whole sample size of the productivity he had at Tennessee. We can work with him on the reads and scanning the field and the progressions and the ability to stay comfortable in the pocket.
Well, the answer's easy. Can you tell me the obvious, other than athletically, can you tell me the obvious difference between Hendon Hooker and Anthony Richardson?
What? Mobility?
Anthony Richardson's 20. Hendon Hooker's 25. He's probably a finished product, is how NFL teams are going to talk about him. Now, there are things that he can improve upon. There are things that he can do within a system, but NFL teams are going to look at him as he's that. That's what he is. And that's fine. But when you're talking about changing the fortunes of your franchise and looking at a player who's 20 years old with the kind of gifts that Anthony Richardson has and seeing how he operated within Florida's offense, which again, they were 6-6. He wasn't great by any stretch of the imagination. But you can see him doing things where, again, I rehash a part of the conversation from last week. The parallel between Anthony Richardson and Malik Willis is being unfairly, incorrectly drawn. Malik Willis was not working through progressions at Liberty. You can see Anthony Richardson trying to operate the offense, even if it made him a touch late on throws, even if it caused problems with his accuracy. You could see him trying to do things that NFL teams will ask him to do at the next level.
But I don't see how a guy is a finished product before he enters the league, regardless of his age. Like, no. Yes, 25 is much older, and you know a lot more about Hendon Hooker at age 25 than you know about what Anthony Richardson will look like at that age.
Decidedly more of a finished product. None of these guys are finished products before they get into the NFL. That is a fair correction by you. We can get into this a little bit and talk about, because now we're talking about the idea of the Titans sniffing around, trading up. Could it be for Hendon Hooker? There are people in the NFL who do not think that he is who is a day 2 pick. They think that he could go first round for exactly the case that Lucas has made. Why not? If he's got the production, if he's got the intangibles, if he's got prototypical physical and athletic gifts that make it work, then what's the big deal? We can get into that. We'll play you the Daniel Jeremiah audio of the Titans exploring trading up for 3 overall, and we'll also talk about Anthony Richardson or Will Levis. Which one would you prefer to have? 615-737-1045. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. Trade rumors are all over the place this time of year, whether that's teams interested in trading or not trading for players, for picks. NFL draft coming up in just a couple of weeks from now. Titans Radio going to have great coverage of the first 2 nights of the draft, as is the custom. And I know Mac and Rhett, Mike Keith, Amy Wells, whole squad have been doing a lot of prep work throughout the course of the Combine, the Senior Bowl, where they've been owners' meetings, all these different places. So I know they'll do a great job, as they always do. Meanwhile, there is information out there that indicates the Titans have been sniffing around to trade up. Now, that trade up most closely has been linked to Arizona, the Cardinals picking at 3rd overall right now. I want you to hear this clip from the Move the Sticks podcast. It's hosted by Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks, 2 of NFL Network's top draft analysts, both, I think, former scouts at different points of their career. I know Bucky played for a couple of years. Either way, this was last Wednesday, and it kind of flew under the radar, but Daniel Jeremiah dropped kind of a big nugget.
Let's take Tyree Wilson, edge rusher from Texas Tech. And 5, the Seattle Seahawks take Jalen Carter from Georgia, big defensive tackle.
All right, a couple things. Number 3, we're not doing trades, right? So no trades.
No trades.
No trades in this
Straight
bad
up.
boy. So before we get to that, with what Indy does at 4, at 3, do you believe when it's all said and done, and we neither one of us do trades at this point in time, does Arizona make that pick?
They're open for business. Somebody jumps up there and they make a pick. It's not going to be the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I'll be shocked if the Arizona Cardinals take a player at the 3rd position.
Can I give you the team that I've been told to keep an eye on that's exploring this and looking into this? Again, this is just people around the league who said do not sleep on numero 11, the Tennessee Titans.
Ooh.
The 2 teams to keep an eye on were the trade-ups were the Raiders and the Titans. Don't sleep on. And then we talked about the Raiders a bunch. We've talked about maybe Seattle at 5. I haven't heard a lot of buzz about Tennessee at 11. That would be an interesting one.
Tennessee to 3. And so a couple of things we could talk about with the Tennessee Titans going up. New general manager, Rand Carthon, working with Mike Vrabel. If this was the move, it tells you everything that you need to know about how they felt about their 3rd round pick, Malik Willis. If you didn't know, based on how they brought Josh Dobbs in, put him at the end of the season, and started him in a game that was to determine whether they're going to the playoffs, it tells you right there they are in the quarterback market, even though they have Ryan Tannehill in tow. And so, yes, that would be not necessarily a big surprise, but it would signal something. And depending upon which quarterback they ultimately selected, speak volumes about how they want this franchise to shift or pivot based on what they're doing with Derrick Henry, maybe nearing the end of his run with the team.
So that's from the Move the Sticks podcast. Titans are the team. Titans and Raiders, teams most discussed around the league about moving up to number 3. That is also something that I was able to confirm from Daniel Jeremiah's reporting, specifically the Titans portion of that information. They have 6 picks right now. They've got 11, 41, 72, 147, 186, and 228. For them to move up from 11 to 3 would probably cost them, obviously, a first-round swap, I would think. I would have to imagine another good pick, which would probably be 41. And I don't want to come up with a theoretical. I don't have the points situation in front of me to assign what would make sense. There's any number of things that they could come up with to meet the trade chart value of the 3rd overall pick, which is how a lot of these teams figure out how to do their trades. Again, it's just exploring the idea. Doesn't mean they're doing it. Doesn't mean that you're getting a new quarterback in this year's draft. You might get a new quarterback in this year's draft. I don't know what round that's going to be. But it doesn't mean anything definitively. It just means that they're exploring the option. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It means they're doing their jobs. That's exactly what they should be doing. Why the hell wouldn't you pick up the phone and call Monty Ossenford, who used to work for you, and say, hey, bud, number 3, what are you thinking? Because I know you're not thinking quarterback. Kyler Murray just signed a 5-year deal last year, and whether he sees the entire life of that deal, he's going to be their thing moving forward until such time as they can figure out whether it's worth the cost to keep him around or however the Kyler Murray thing plays out. Right now, he's their quarterback. So it's not like Kyler Murray is going to have done to him what he did to Josh Rosen at this stage. It would be an interesting decision given that the first two quarterbacks you think of with number 1 and number 2, however you want to order them and however teams are going to order them, are Stroud and Young. So you would be really talking about one of the other 3 of the top 5 quarterbacks, which would be Richardson, Levis, and Hendon Hooker. Now, I don't know that Hendon Hooker is going to be a first-round draft pick. I would be surprised, but there's a lot of quarterback-needy teams in this draft who he would make sense for, who don't have to start him right away. Seattle, the Raiders, those are 2 teams that come to mind in particular. Tennessee's situation at 11 would likely take them out of the quarterback draft unless it was Hendon Hooker. 11 feels like you could get a lot of players at more important, I don't want to say more important positions, but better players at positions of need with Ryan Tannehill currently on your roster than to use the 11th overall selection on Hendon Hooker. You could always trade back, potentially. That there are scenarios where you could make that make sense. But I guess at this point, if I'm to pose you the hypothetical that they're exploring trading up for 3 overall, who are you better off with, Richardson or Levis? Because I think Levis, the more that I watch him, the more that you see the traits, the more that I see career ceiling of Ryan Tannehill, which is a really good NFL career. It's not a championship-winning quarterback to date. It's not somebody who had a tremendous amount of overall success in college, though they were high-level athletes and obviously first-round picks, both Tannehill and Levis will be. So I'm looking around at Levis and saying, okay, I mean, you could do that. It would fit. You could make that make sense. 1 year of Tannehill left under contract. Work out some of the kinks that Will Levis has in his game. I think he also is somebody who doesn't go through progressions well. I think his decision-making can be erratic, and the turnovers last year were a problem. Injuries factor in, but, his tape was his tape. Richardson is the bigger unknown with theoretically the higher upside. So I think to look at Richardson and say, if you're going to mortgage those picks, what has the higher potential for reward in this scenario? The answer right now is Anthony Richardson.
Well, you brought up the age factor between Hooker and Richardson. Hooker's 25. He will be 25 this season. Richardson is currently 20 years old. And I'm not sure when Anthony Richardson turns 21. But
May 22nd.
In May, so he'll be 21 this season.
Yeah.
Will Levis is 24.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm sorry, 23. He will be 24 in just a couple of months. In June, I believe. So he'll be 24 this season. So between Will Levis and Hendon Hooker, you're talking about a 1-year difference.
Yeah. But pro-style system, easier to drop him in right away. Don't have to worry about the ACL. Like, there's a number of different factors there. Not saying right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just saying that's how NFL people are going to talk about it. Then there's Peter King, one of the foremost NFL writers for many, many decades at this point. He always puts out his Monday morning column. It's called Football Morning in America on NBCSports.com. And he had written a couple of basically, he's doing a mock draft as a part of his column and explaining his decisions along the path. And he gets to number 3 at Arizona, where he's saying the Cardinals, who might be the worst team in terms of talent in the league, are in a good position. If they can somehow get one of the first 2 quarterbacks, that would not make sense for them. But after the first 2 picks, they would be able to come up with a lot of teams who would be able to trade for that 3rd overall pick and then still be able to get the player likely that they wanted, whether that's Will Anderson, who's talked about as the best non-quarterback in this draft, or otherwise. So with what we're seeing here, Peter King writes of Anthony Richardson's pro day after his workout this past Thursday in Gainesville. I thought I'd tell you how the very top of the draft board stands from what I heard at the league meetings with some info gleaned over the weekend. And Lucas, what was the most interesting Anthony Richardson nugget that you found in there from Peter King?
Oh, it had nothing to do with Anthony Richardson. Well, maybe not, but it's not specifically talking about Anthony Richardson. It's the second bullet point on there where he says the Texans have to pick a quarterback, or do they? One league personnel person telling Peter King, quote, "It's a stretch, but I could see Nick Caserio taking Will Anderson, then using his second first-round pick and trading back up to get his quarterback." So it's citing Nick Caserio's conservative nature in the Texans potentially just taking who they believe to be the best player available, would likely be Will Anderson at third, and then maneuvering in some other way to get their quarterback. If they're not in love with Levis or Richardson, one or the other.
You remember what Cosell said when he sat down with us at the Combine, like in person? He said he didn't think he had heard that the Texans might not be definitively taking a quarterback at 2. Greg said that on the radio show, which obviously made me perk up, and then we kind of just moved along with wherever our discussion went. But Greg had brought that up a couple of weeks ago.
Free agency, right? Like
that was I think, Carolina Panthers trade up.
Oh, absolutely. It definitely was. Definitely was before that. But pre-free agency. So before Jimmy Garoppolo lands in Vegas, right? Like you don't know what. So you could say that before free agency and say, hey, maybe the Texans scoop up a veteran quarterback that they feel can kind of be a stopgap, and they try to get their guy in 24. But they didn't really do that, right? Who's on the QB depth chart of the Houston Texans right now?
Isn't it Heineke? And
no, Heineke's in Atlanta.
Oh, so it's Davis Mills and who? They signed somebody.
They did sign somebody.
It's not Jake. It's not Jake Brisket.
Nope, he's in Washington.
Not Andy Dalton. I know Andy Dalton got another job, but I don't think it was the Texans. I can't think of. I know they had to have signed a veteran.
Case Keenum.
Okay,
Case Keenum.
So older model Taylor Heineke, I think, by a couple of years.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
So you have 2 teams in the AFC South who have kind of done that, because isn't Gardner Minshew in the same category?
Yes, he's in Indy.
Even further younger model Taylor Heineke?
It is a good parallel. It's Minshew and Erlinger in Indy, and it's Case Keenum and Davis Mills in Houston.
So they could patch that together somehow, some way, Indy more than Houston.
But Peter King's scenario is not the Texans just don't take a quarterback in the upcoming draft.
No,
it's they don't do it at 3.
Yeah.
And they find a way to trade back up and use that kind of mid-first round pick they have to maneuver and get their guy.
He adds, I still believe it's far more likely Houston stays at 2 and gives its fans the long-term quarterback the franchise has been seeking since its inception in 2002. Cal McNair certainly wants the quarterback at 2. Texans fans will be deflated if the loser of the young Stroud stakes in Carolina isn't the pick at 2.
That is obviously the likeliest scenario, that Bryce Young is their guy, because right now signs are pointing to C.J. Stroud being in Carolina.
I imagine Nick Caserio somewhere. I don't know Nick Caserio at all, but I just imagine Nick Caserio being so distraught by the idea that Bryce Young's playing weight is probably 187 pounds and be like, nope, you know what? Will Anderson, no quarterbacks. We'll figure it out. Oof. Not ideal if you're a Texans fan. Jamie is calling us from Chapel Hill up next. Hey, Jamie.
Hey, one thing that we never, or at least I don't hear talk about anymore, is the Wonderlic, and my only reason for bringing it up is I think maybe the NFL itself still has access to it, but I want the guy, I want the most athletic guy, of course, but I want the smartest guy that's the most athletic guy. Where does that come into the discussion anymore? We never even talk about that.
I don't think I've ever in my life cared about Wonderlic scores.
They got rid of it. They
don't do it anymore?
They don't do it. I believe the last time they did it at the Combine as one of these assessments was 2021.
Is there like a list? I'd be curious just at it. I don't know. I literally have never factored in Wonderlic scores.
Yeah, so starting in 2022, they stopped using the Wonderlic.
Okay, so that's recent. Super recent. Yeah, because the highest scoring Wonderlic tests are supposed to be confidential. This is an NFL.com article. Tests are supposed to be confidential, but have leaked out and have been reported. Ryan Fitzpatrick and Greg McElroy are the highest scoring players on the Wonderlic. Blaine Gabbert, Alex Smith, Eli Manning, Colin Kaepernick, Matt Flynn, Matt Stafford all got 38s.
Is that good?
Yeah. So 48 is the highest score by Fitzpatrick and McElroy. 38, Colin Kaepernick, Matt Flynn, Matt Stafford, Romo, and Luck. It was a pop-up. Get off me. Romo and Luck, 37. Rodgers, Leinart, Stafford, and Christian Ponder, 35. So, I don't know what to make of that.
And I've never, all over the place.
Yeah, I've never taken the Wonderlic. I don't know what's asked on it. I literally have never once considered Wonderlic at all in my draft discussion.
We should do that as a show.
What, the Wonderlic?
Each of the three of us should take the Wonderlic.
I'm very scared that Robert is going to come out with the highest Wonderlic score.
I also
I'm not
think
handle
Robert
that.
would have the highest score.
I'm not going to handle that well. I don't know why. There's zero evidence to indicate that he would have the highest Wonderlic score, but it's concerning to me. That would further indicate that there would be a coup on the horizon if Robert is proved to be the smartest among us.
A bunch of people are talking in the YouTube chat, and I do remember Vince Young had a famously low Wonderlic score.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find the lowest scores on here. Oh, God. Terry Bradshaw, 15.
Oof.
Jim Kelly, 15. Donovan McNabb. So the quarterback's not bad.
Those are all good quarterbacks. All those guys played in the Super Bowl, right? Jim Kelly played in the Super Bowl.
Didn't he play? Oh, I don't. This is going to expose how far back our NFL knowledge. He wasn't a part. Was he the Four Falls?
Yeah.
That was Jim Kelly?
Yes.
Okay. Donovan McNabb, Dan Marino, all 15s. Vince Young has scored a 7. So I don't know what that means. And I don't know who Oscar Davenport is, but he got a 6. Apparently that's the lowest score. Or lowest recorded score. Okay. Last call for phone calls. We'll update some polls. We'll do a quick Panzika Preds minute because they had a big old win on Saturday as they try and climb into the last wild card spot in the NHL playoffs. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. All right, let's wrap this thing up, shall we? Last call for phone calls. If you got them, 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. Let's go to Chris in Smyrna up next. Hey, Chris.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
So I was calling because I heard y'all talking about the Wonderlic, and I actually had to take it for a job that I have. And it's not necessarily that it's difficult. It's just how they word stuff is messed up, and it's just kind of complicated. I actually got an 18 on it.
Okay.
We only did like 30 questions.
I appreciate the call, Chris. So Robert apparently found a free Wonderlic.
Yes.
So we're going to take it as a show and find out who's smartest.
Now, look, I need everybody's solemn vow, though, that we are not – now that I've presented you with the link, I've presented you with the testing material, I don't know what's stopping you guys from going home and taking this test 3 or 4 times and then just sending me the best score.
So you are alleging that one of us would cheat?
Hell yeah! If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, because I know I would cheat.
Yeah, I think we have to be in the same room, if I'm being honest.
No.
I think that's what has to happen,
honestly,
because I will cheat.
I will. It says you can't even use a calculator.
I will use a calculator. We have to be in the same room. We have to come in 30 minutes before the show, sit down on our laptop.
There is 0% chance you're getting me here a half hour before the show.
Well, then there's a 0% chance that I'm not going to cheat. Like, are these Wonderlic scores are going to be skewed?
That is the only way. We have to be in the same room.
I'm going to look like the smartest quarterback in NFL history.
We're all going to cheat.
Is that a hexagon? Is that a rectangle? I don't know, but Google does.
What does it say that all 3 of us thought about cheating?
It's just going to be whichever
and
person.
are actively admitting, yes, we have to sit in the same room or we will cheat.
It's just whoever has like the least amount of audacity. Like if someone comes in with a perfect score, like we're all going to cheat, but who's able to cheat enough to where it seems like we didn't cheat? Because you come in with a perfect score and it's too obvious.
Who among us is least likely to cheat, do we feel?
Well, we're all 100%.
Yeah, I know.
So it's just about who can get the best score, and to achieve that, we have to be in the same room.
But what if we all cheat and still did poorly? Like, I think that would be funnier.
That would be good.
What if we cheat and just completely bleep the band?
I can't get over a 20.
Yeah. Why do they keep asking me what these colors are?
Chuck in Clarksville will wrap us up for callers. Hey, Chuck.
Hey, Buck. Just wanted to weigh in one last time on this Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. Look, trash talking in basketball has been around forever. If I have a granddaughter who's playing basketball, she wants to play forward, I'm going to tell her to be like Angel Reese. And she wants to be guard like Caitlin Clark. If you don't like that, go to golf. Just be careful, Tiger, don't slip a tampon in your bag.
Polls, please.
Zoinks like, hey, Scoop, stop the count, Yeah. The polls have closed. The votes are in. It's time for a poll update, Scoop. A poll update? Yeah. Zoinks, Scoop. Here's Buck Rising Show daily correspondent Lucas Panzica. Lucas Panzica? Yeah.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, who sells below MSRP on any non-specialty new Ford. If the Titans were to move up to the number 3 overall pick, which quarterback would you want it to be for? Anthony Richardson or Will Levis? 1,500 people voted. 81% said Anthony Richardson, but I think the majority of people are in the replies saying neither. William says, I'd rather take my chances with Hendon dropping to the second round. Zay says, if we move up for Levis, I will jump off the closest bridge. So if there was a neither option, which we did not provide in this poll, I think that would have the vast majority. People are not excited about the prospect of trading up for Richardson or Levis.
Oh, you chicken bleeps. Don't complain to me about how your team doesn't take swings to try and get franchise quarterbacks. I'm not saying that Levis or Richardson is one, but this is how you find them. If you feel good enough about one, do it. If not, then don't. That's as simple as it is.
What was the worst offense in the women's national championship game? Angel Reese talking trash or the officiating? 80% say the officiating.
I thought the officiating was garbage. I would pick officiating 10 times out of 10 because I thought the whining about Angel Reese afterwards was soft.
Should the radio show make a hype video like Big Jeff's agent did? 71% say yes.
What are you laughing about? You have to film it and edit it.
I know. That's what I'm laughing about.
Yeah,
it would be terrible.
I am down, but I will put zero work towards this.
Yeah, nobody. Again, it's like the Wonderlic. We all think it's a great idea, and then we're just going to completely undermine the exercise and cheat.
When Buck you get a new contract, inevitably, I will make a hype video for it. We will make a hype video for that contract signing.
Well, don't say that too loud. There are no guarantees around here.
What will be the most improved unit on the Vols defense in 2023? Tennessee had their first scrimmage of spring ball over the weekend. Didn't quite get to it today, but 53% say it'll be the secondary. 19% say the pass rush. 16% say linebackers. Only 12% say the defensive line.
Why don't we touch on that tomorrow? I think it's worth bringing up with Bruce Feldman from The Athletic. He'll join us as well, not just covering a lot of things in college football, but I'm sure he has some thoughts on the Vols.
And who you got, UConn or San Diego State? 80% are going the Huskies.
I think that's as close to a majority as we've ever had. Is that... That was unnecessary.
That was a husky.
I don't think huskies howl.
They 100% do.
They definitely howl.
They are the dogs that you mush on snow sleighs.
Like they're wolves. What are you talking about?
Oh, that's what they do.
I think you guys are just making stuff up. You don't know anything. Otherwise, you'd do well on the Wonderlic without cheating. Those the polls? Excellent. That's the show. Thanks for hanging out with us. Prime time tonight at 8 p.m. If I don't catch you there, we're back at it 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.